Lieutenant Elias Morrow adjusted the pressure seals on his helmet, the hiss of air escaping reminding him just how far from home he really was. The sky above Jacker, 9 hung like a bruised veil, thick with violet mist and a glimmering sun that never quite broke through the treetops. He paused on the edge of the forest, the air charged with static from distant storms, and checked his scanner. Life readings, abundant, erratic, and dense, blinked furiously on the display. The others had called him foolish for accepting the assignment alone. Jacker, 9 wasn't just uncharted, it was infamous. Stories filtered through the ranks of survey crews. Accounts of creatures that made apex predators on Earth look like domesticated pets. But for Elias, it was more than scientific curiosity. It was about proving something. That human connection, even in the coldest corners of the galaxy, could still shape the unknown. That there were still first contacts waiting for someone brave or desperate enough to reach out. He moved cautiously into the undergrowth. The flora here moved as though it breathed, retracting or stretching depending on his presence. He placed a hand gently on a stalk that recoiled like a muscle. The forest wasn't quiet. On the contrary, it teemed with sound, but there was no birdsong or familiar rhythm. It was alien in every sense, and it was watching. By midday, Elias reached a clearing that didn't register on any of the orbital scans. The land dipped in a wide bowl, and a low mist clung to the edges like a curtain. A hush fell the moment he stepped forward, and even his own footsteps felt like violations. He crouched, examining a set of massive tracks embedded in the soft loam. 4 digits clawed, but oddly symmetrical. He exhaled, breath fogging the visor. Then he saw it. It emerged from the mist without sound, an immense quadrupedal form as fluid as shadow and as pale as moonlight. The panther-like beast was unlike anything he had imagined. It moved with preternatural grace, muscles flowing beneath short white fur that shimmered faintly with every breath. Its eyes, those eyes, were a piercing, unnatural green, glowing softly like twin stars. Elias remained still. His heart pounded, but his training held. He didn't reach for the tranq gun slung over his shoulder. He didn't run. Instead, he lowered himself to one knee. Between them, the clearing held its breath. The creature regarded him without aggression, but also without fear. Its gaze pierced through him, studying rather than threatening. Elias slowly opened a pocket on his suit, removing a sealed ration pouch. He tore it open, letting the scent waft into the air, and placed it on the moss-covered ground in front of him. Then he leaned back, palms open, a universal gesture of peace. The beast didn't approach immediately. It circled once, twice, sniffing the air, moving with deliberate elegance. Finally, it stepped forward and lowered its head to sniff the ration. Its jaw opened slightly, exposing sharp, curved teeth that could easily tear through armor. But it didn't attack. It ate. Elias didn't move until it had finished. The creature lifted its head and locked eyes with him once more. He expected it to leave, to retreat into the mists like a dream. Instead, it sat down. The two remained in the clearing for nearly an hour. Elias dared not speak, unsure what sound might shatter the fragile understanding. When he finally rose, slow and cautious, the creature mirrored him, rising in one smooth motion. He backed away, step by step, never turning his back. The creature followed, not close enough to alarm, but not far enough to ignore. Back at his camp, he activated the perimeter sensors and began dictating his field log. Log entry 147. Subject encountered. Unknown class, 9 predator. Approximate mass, 400 kilograms. Behavior, highly intelligent, non-aggressive. Response to food offering, positive. Subject maintained visual contact for over 50 minutes. Follow me to camp perimeter, but did not attempt entry. Possible signs of curiosity or bonding behavior. He paused, then added quietly, no fear. It didn't fear me. That's what's different. Night fell over Jacker, 9 like a weighted blanket. The stars above were obscured, the jungle alive with murmurs and rustles. From the tent window, Elias saw the faint shimmer of green eyes in the dark. The creature sat just beyond the boundary, watching. Not stalking, watching. The next morning was still there. He walked to the perimeter, carrying another food pouch. The creature remained seated as he approached. He tossed the pouch gently into the clearing. The creature caught it midair, its movement too fast to track. Another log entry. Another day with the impossible. 3 days passed, then 5. The creature, he started calling at her in his logs, though he couldn't explain why, did not leave. She followed him during his daily excursions, but never intruded, never obstructed. She responded to his presence, his voice, even his gestures. She was learning, adapting. On the 6th day, the incident occurred. Elias had wandered deeper than usual, chasing a signal spike that suggested a new mineral formation. The forest narrowed into a choke point between 2 jagged cliffs. He knew better than to go in blind, but the readings were too valuable to ignore. As he stepped into the gap, the ground erupted beneath him. A reptilian predator, scaled and spined like a nightmare, launched upward with claws extended. Elias had no time to draw his weapon. He'd barely had time to scream, but she was faster. The white blur hit the predator midair, a collision of muscle and fury. The 2 creatures slammed into the rock wall, and Elias scrambled back as the jungle shook with the sounds of battle. It lasted less than 10 seconds. When the dust settled, the reptilian beast lay twitching in the undergrowth. The white panther stood above it, blood dripping from her jaws. She turned to Elias. Her eyes were not wild. They were calm. He stumbled backward, heart racing, every part of his mind screaming that this thing was still a monster. But when she stepped toward him, slowly, head bowed, he didn't run. He couldn't. That night, he didn't sleep. His thoughts raced in circles. What was this? A guardian? A protector? Was it instinct? Did she see him as territory or something more? He tried to explain it in the next field report, but words failed. Science had no term for this. Evolution had no precedent. He sat by the fire, watching her silhouette through the thin veil of his camp screen. Her body was still, but he could tell she wasn't sleeping. She never truly did. Eventually, he spoke aloud, knowing she could hear. Why me? The jungle answered only with the wind. The next morning, he woke to find 2 small alien fruits, carefully placed outside the camp boundary. Gifts. He laughed softly, overwhelmed. For the first time in days, Elias Morrow felt something unexpected on this deadly, wild world. He felt seen. And somewhere deep in his chest, a question bloomed, not of science or survival, but of purpose. He had come to study monsters. Instead, he may have found a friend. Elias crouched to the edge of the glade, watching her, Naira, as he now called her, sip from a shallow spring. The name had come to him without ceremony, plucked from a half-remembered myth his mother once told him. Naira had been a guardian spirit, fierce and loyal, misunderstood by mortals. The parallel seemed fitting. The creature's pale fur rippled as she moved, always alert, always aware. It had been nearly 2 weeks since their first encounter, and she had not left his side. In that time, Elias had documented everything. Her gait, her vocalizations, her sleep patterns, or rather, the odd, meditative states she entered. He noted her preference for cooked protein over raw meat, and how she circled the camp perimeter every night before settling, just beyond his reach. But no amount of observation explained the subtle shifts in their relationship. What had started as curiosity had deepened into something more. Recognition, perhaps, or even trust. Each morning she brought something new. Not just food, though the offerings continued, but strange objects. A carved stone shaped like a crescent, a piece of bark etched with symmetrical scratches, even a shiny fragment of metal that couldn't have come from any known fauna. Elias began to suspect intelligence. Not simple animal cunning, but the kind of awareness that danced just beneath language. He felt it in the way she looked at him, how her head tilted when he spoke softly, how she paced behind him as he worked as though protecting more than just territory. He had begun testing communication strategies. Hand gestures worked best. When he raised both arms above his head and then lowered them slowly, she would sit. When he made a clockwise circle in the air, she circled the same direction. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't fast, but it was happening. Progress. On the seventh attempt, she even mimicked his open-handed salute, pressing a paw to the ground in what felt like imitation. He filmed it, of course. The footage, he knew, would be revolutionary if he ever got the chance to share it. That uncertainty gnawed at the edge of his thoughts. Command had stopped responding to his status reports 3 days ago. Interference was common on Jacker 9, but silence for that long wasn't protocol. Something was wrong. His fears were confirmed when the sky cracked open with the unmistakable roar of descending thrusters. He scrambled to high ground, just beyond the ridge where he'd first found a clearing. Through the haze, he saw the silver hull of a low-orbit dropship touching down. It bore the insignia of Corvalex Industries, not the Earth Union crest he expected. Mercenaries. Private muscle. He activated his long-range comm unit, but the encryption ping returned an error. Jammed. Elias returned to camp, packing essentials into his satchel. The situation had changed. Corvalex only sent in muscle for one reason: acquisition. He scanned the clearing. Naira was there, but she'd already risen to her feet, muscles taut, head turned toward the horizon. She sensed a threat too. He considered running. Disappearing deeper into the forest might buy him time, but it wouldn't protect her. They'd come for the beast, not for him. Capturing, or killing, something like Naira would make them rich and famous in equal measure. He couldn't let that happen. That night, he didn't sleep. He set up motion alarms around the camp and kept his sidearm within arm's reach. Naira stayed closer than usual, her breathing steady but alert. In the pale moonlight that filtered through the trees, Elias saw the faint shimmer of her eyes watching the forest beyond. She was waiting. At dawn, they arrived. The mercenaries didn't announce themselves. They moved like phantoms, 5 in total, clad in black armor with silent weapons and mirrored visors. Elias stepped out to greet them before they breached the perimeter. One raised a hand, not to signal peace, but to order him to stand down. "We're taking over operations here," the lead one said, voice flat through the helmet comms. "You've made contact with a Valari-class predator. Congratulations. Now back off." "It's not just a predator," Elias replied. "She's sentient, responsive, possibly empathic. I have footage logs." "We're not here for a science lesson, Lieutenant," the merc cut in. "Our orders are containment. If we can't contain, we neutralize." Elias's hand clenched around the satchel strap. "You don't understand. This isn't some wild animal. She protected me. She learns. She gives gifts, for God's sake." The lead mercenary stepped forward, visor reflecting Elias's face. "Then you've already compromised the mission." That night, the camp was taken from him. The merc set up heavy-duty traps and emitters laced with pheromonal attractants. Elias watched in horror as they prepared a tranquilizer field laced with a compound known to incapacitate class. 9 predators. He tried to sabotage the device once, but was met with a stun baton and a warning shot. They didn't see Naira watching from the treetops. She didn't come down when the traps were laid, but she didn't leave either. She paced the edges of the perimeter, her form a ghost in the trees, her eyes flashing like green embers in the dark. Elias could feel the tension in the air, something ancient and primal winding tighter with each hour. When the trap was sprung, it happened in silence. Naira stepped into the clearing with her usual grace. She sniffed the bait, then paused. Her muscles tensed. She sensed the unnatural smell, the hidden arcs of electricity humming beneath the ground. But she didn't retreat. Instead, she turned her gaze toward Elias, who stood helplessly just outside the containment zone. She looked at him, not with confusion or betrayal, but with understanding. Then she moved, fast and direct, right into the field. The shock hit her mid-step. Her body convulsed violently, legs folding beneath her, jaw open in a silent roar. Elias rushed forward, but was tackled from behind. He hit the ground hard, face pressed into the dirt as Naira collapsed, limp and breathing shallow. Target subdued, one of the mercs announced. Tagging for extraction. Elias fought against the arms holding him. She trusted me. Don't you get it? She didn't run because I was here. She didn't run because she's an animal, the lead merc replied coldly. One that just made our job a lot easier. But the moment they moved to lift her, it all changed. Naira's eyes shot open. In one motion, she was on her feet, body a blur of motion and fury. The first mercenary went down with a crushed throat. The second fired a shock round that bounced harmlessly off her flank. She moved like a blade of light, precise, unrelenting, unstoppable. Elias scrambled back, shouting her name. Naira! Stop! She froze, mid-pounce. Her glowing eyes locked on him, and her body, trembling with adrenaline and pain, slowly relaxed. Behind her, the remaining mercs lay unconscious or too injured to move. The clearing was silent again. He stepped forward, hands raised, and she allowed him to approach. He placed a hand on her shoulder, warm, solid, alive. That night, they didn't return to camp. Elias destroyed the signal booster, burned his field logs, and loaded what supplies he could carry. Naira followed him without hesitation. As they vanished into the thick jungle, he realized he had crossed a line. There would be no going back. But he wasn't afraid. He wasn't alone. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm shaped by necessity and vigilance. Elias and Naira moved deeper into the forest, traversing landscapes that no human had documented. Crystalline canyons, fungal groves that pulsed with bioluminescence, streams that shimmered with microfauna. Each step away from the wreckage of his mission felt both liberating and treacherous. He was no longer a scientist in the field. He was a fugitive, hunted by those who would silence what he had discovered. Naira moved with practiced silence, often scouting ahead and returning with minute traces of blood on her jaws, her coat unblemished despite the dangers lurking in the wild. She had become more protective since the ambush, more attuned to Elias's moods and vulnerabilities. Where once she had kept a polite distance, now she brushed against him when they camped, her presence constant, reassuring. And Elias, though he never said it aloud, found comfort in that silent companionship. He missed the sky, not the one above Jacker, 9, veiled and swollen with violet clouds, but Earth's stars, the feeling of being tethered to something familiar. In the rare moments of rest, he replayed old memories, conversations with his sister, the smell of hot plastic from his mother's cluttered kitchen, the sea foam wind of a winter trip to Ireland. All echoes now, unreachable, but Naira grounded him. Every moment with her felt immediate, real. She was not a symbol or specimen anymore. She was someone. On the 10th night after the escape, as a soft rain misted the forest, Elias sat near a small fire, its flames carefully shielded with thermoplastic sheets. Naira lay curled a few meters away, her breathing slow and steady. He spoke into the recorder, though he no longer believed anyone would ever hear it. "Log, unofficial," he murmured. "I don't know what day it is anymore. Naira and I have crossed what looks like an old fault line, maybe tectonically stable. The environment is shifting, less canopy, more low growth. Signs of burrowing species, possibly safer terrain. But it's not just terrain. I'm changing. I feel it. Not infected, not compromised. Just different. Like the mission peeled something away I didn't know I was hiding behind." He paused, turning the recorder off. Some thoughts weren't for records. Naira stirred, rising with a low chuff. Her head turned sharply toward the ridge behind them. Elias stood up instinctively. He'd learned to trust her instincts. They were never wrong. A hum threaded through the air. Low, pulsing, unmistakably artificial. A drone. He grabbed his satchel and doused the fire. The two of them moved quickly, cutting through the undergrowth. The sound grew louder, closer. Not a survey drone, it was scanning, broadcasting. They found a hollow beneath a root cluster, and Elias slipped in, Naira crouching beside him. The drone passed overhead, sleek and silent, bristling with sensors. Its searchlight swept the canopy, but didn't penetrate the thick fog below. After a long moment, it veered away. Elias didn't exhale until the sound had vanished. "They know we're alive," he said. "They're still looking." Naira bumped her head lightly against his shoulder. It was something she had begun doing after they fled. An action not of dominance or intimidation, but reassurance. He returned the gesture with a slow stroke down the line of her back. Her muscles tensed beneath his palm, alert even in calm. Later, as they made their way through a grove lit by faint blue fungal glow, Elias found a man-made structure half swallowed by the forest. A relay station, ancient, likely from one of the first colonial attempts on Jackernine. The satellite dish was cracked, the walls overgrown, but the core transponder had power. It was a risk, but they needed help. Inside, Elias cleared enough vines to expose the controls. The interface flickered erratically. He bypassed the encryption with the last of his custom codes. The screen sputtered. He input a broad-spectrum transmission. "This is Lieutenant Elias Morrow, Earth Union Survey Division, reporting unauthorized activity by Corvalex Industries on Jackernine. They've attempted extraction of a native life form, classified Valari class, using lethal force. I am accompanied by said life form. I believe it to be intelligent. I have evidence. Requesting immediate retrieval and investigation." He sent the message on a 5-minute repeating loop. Then he powered down the relay and pulled the cord chip from housing. "If they hear it," he whispered to Naira, "we might have a chance." They stayed near the station for 2 days, rationing food, moving only at night. On the second evening, a sharp metallic crack shattered the silence. A flash of white-hot light lanced through the forest. Naira leapt in front of Elias, growling low, her fur standing on end. Corvalex had responded, not with diplomacy, with orbital munitions. The relay station was reduced to slag. They barely escaped the blast radius. Smoke coiled through the trees, and the taste of ionized metal clung to the back of Elias's throat. He didn't speak as they ran. There was no need. The message had been received and rejected. They camped that night in the hollowed trunk of a massive tree. Elias shivered under his thermal blanket, soaked to the bone. Naira lay curled around him, her warmth the only barrier between his body and hypothermia. "They're going to wipe this place clean," he said quietly, almost to himself. Pretend it was never surveyed. Pretend we never landed. That you never existed." Naira didn't respond. How could she? But he felt her heartbeat against his back. "Then we don't let them," he said after a while. "We find another way." At dawn, he set to work. Not on weapons. They couldn't outgun Corvalex, but on signals. He configured his remaining beacons, created a relay chain, encrypted with quantum shifting patterns. It would take time to decipher, weeks, maybe months, but someone would eventually hear it. Naira watched him work with unwavering focus. When he soldered circuits, she would pace near the perimeter. When he paused to rest, she would lie beside him, her breath warm and slow. She had begun to change too, more vocal, mimicking some of his whistles and sounds. Once, when he stumbled and cried out in pain, she echoed the syllables back softly, as though trying to understand. "You're more than they'll ever know," he told her. "More than I understand." She tilted her head. That evening, as they sat beneath a canopy of phosphorescent leaves, he spoke aloud without the recorder. "My name is Elias Morrow. I'm not just a scientist. Not anymore. I don't know, something else. I've seen the worst of us and the best in something we never deserved. And if this story ends with me buried on a forgotten planet, at least I won't be buried alone." Naira let out a soft, rhythmic sound, something between a purr and a sigh. He looked at her and nodded. "We're not running anymore." In the distance, the forest echoed with a different sound, metal clanging, voices distorted by helmet comms. Corvalex was closing in again. But this time, Elias didn't flinch. This time, they had a plan. The trap had to work. There was no fallback, no second chance. Elias crouched behind a tangle of rocks, the beacon device thrumming lightly in his hand. The signal lure he'd built from salvage transponders and thermomimetic foil blinked red, casting a faint glow over the mossy ground. Any moment now, the Corvalex unit would arrive, lured by a phantom heat signature mapped to Naira's patterns, broadcasting weak life signs, simulating stress. Elias had encoded it to mimic a wounded beast, an irresistible prize. Naira remained out of sight, her body melded with the forest shadows. She knew her role. It had taken hours of silent coordination, of repeated gestures and word associations to convey what they needed to do. She had learned quickly, not just mimicry, but comprehension. Her mind was nimble, hungry for connection. And now it was all being tested. Elias exhaled through his teeth. He could hear them. Not voices, footsteps. Heavy, armored. A distant hum announced a hoverpod descending just beyond the ridge. He counted 5 life signs. One drone. They moved with deliberate confidence, fanning out through the underbrush. A voice crackled through a local channel, sharp and clipped. Thermal signature locked. Close radius. Hold formation. Capture alive if possible. Orders are non-lethal unless provoked. Elias adjusted the dial on the lure, raising the signal's stress profile. The drone pivoted toward it like a moth to flame, shining a spotlight down through the mist. One of the mercs knelt beside the device, scanning. "It's artificial," he muttered. "Decoy rigged to mimic biosigns. Get eyes up, this is a setup." Elias triggered the charge. The blast wasn't lethal, but it didn't have to be. The concussive shockwave knocked the men off their feet, scrambled the drone's sensors, and coated the area in chaff that blocked standard optical surveillance. In that instant of chaos, Naira struck. She moved like lightning over wet stone, silent, surgical, a phantom. 2 guards fell before the others could lift their weapons. She didn't kill them. That had been Elias's condition. Disable, never end. She obeyed. The third merc turned and fired, a stun burst lighting up the haze. It grazed Naira's flank, sending her tumbling, but she recovered instantly, springing forward and pinning him with a thud. Elias emerged from the underbrush and leveled his sidearm at the last standing soldier, only to freeze. He recognized the face beneath the cracked visor. "Sergeant Keene," Elias said. "You're still with Corvalex?" The man's lips tightened. His grip on his rifle didn't loosen. "You're supposed to be dead." "You tried," Elias replied. "Twice." Keene gestured toward Naira, who now stood between them, tail low but body poised. "You're protecting it? You've lost your mind." "No," Elias said quietly. "I found something worth protecting." Keene's eyes flicked to the other mercs groaning on the ground. "You trained it. You think that makes it safe? It's an apex predator. You're playing God, Elias." Elias stepped closer. "I didn't train her. I listened. She chose to stay. There's a difference." Keene's aim didn't waver. "Even if I believed you, none of this matters. Corvalex owns this mission. They'll just send more of us. Stronger. Smarter. You can't win." "I don't need to win," Elias said. "I just need someone to hear us." He tossed the memory chip forward. It landed at Keene's feet. "That's everything. Her cognitive patterns. Vocal mimicry. Problem solving. Emotional reciprocity. She's not a specimen. She's a person. And you're going to help me get that to someone who gives a damn." Keene stared at the chip. Naira growled softly. Finally, he lowered the weapon. "You're insane," Keene muttered. "But maybe that's what it takes." He pocketed the chip and slung his rifle. "I'll get it to the Black Channels. Maybe someone in the Terran Parliament is still listening. But after this, I'm done. You'll never see me again." Elias nodded. "That's all I want." Keene activated his evac beacon and disappeared into the trees, dragging one of the stunned mercs with him. Elias watched the glow of his locator fade into the mist. Naira padded to his side, brushing against him gently. He reached out and touched her face, letting his hand rest near her jaw. "You were perfect," he whispered. "You trusted me." She tilted her head, making a soft sound like a low chirp. Elias smiled, though fatigue lined every part of him. They moved that night, deeper into the uncharted zones where the trees grew impossibly tall and the undergrowth glowed with internal light. The forest became quieter, more reverent. Naira led now, Elias following, content to walk behind the only creature on this planet who had never lied to him. Weeks passed. No new ships came. No drones. The jungle closed around them, hiding them from history. Then, one morning, Elias awoke to find Naira gone. Panic surged, until he heard her cry from above. She was in the trees, not alone. 3 smaller figures surrounded her, sleek, furred, bright-eyed. Not exact copies, but close. Pups. Her young. Elias stood rooted to the spot. She had never once shown signs of gestation. It was possible, more than possible, that they weren't her biological offspring. They could be others of her kind, hidden until now, drawn by her absence, her signals. Or perhaps she had led him here, not to escape, but to return. Naira dropped down beside him, the smallest of the new creatures following her clumsily. She looked at Elias, eyes steady, and nudged the young one forward. Elias knelt, breath caught in his throat. The pup sniffed his hand, then curled against his knee. In that moment, he understood. He wasn't an intruder anymore. He was family. He spent the days learning again, studying their interactions, recording their sounds, building a small shelter that could withstand the coming storm season. And at night, he told them stories. About stars, about oceans, about a world far away that had nearly forgotten how to see life that wasn't shaped like itself. He would never go back. Not because he couldn't, because he no longer needed to. Above them, one evening, a flicker of light moved across the sky. A satellite, proof that the message had made it out. He smiled. That was enough. He sat beside Naira as the forest pulsed with quiet life, and the youngest of her kind curled around his legs. The galaxy's deadliest beast had found her family, and so had he.